And Kyrut said, in the secondary beginning, many people said, whoa, hold up, this is far too close to the beginning for us to start here.
And Kyrut said, all city residents stand accused by their ancestors.
And Kyrut said, there is this one fellow who carries in his billfold, in lieu of a credit card, a mirror with an engraved inscription that reads, your reactions only prove you're as common as you feared.
And Kyrut said, a deed well done need be done only once.
And Kyrut said, since they had no prior model to go by, this one city had to makeshift a public warning for the citizens to be on the lookout for a man who'd had an original idea.
And Kyrut said, turning over in his mind a phrase he'd just heard, a certain revolutionist mused, taking time off. What a curious concept.
And Kyrut said, at that all-night coffee shop on 2nd Street, one old sorehead said he'd decided to make a list of his favorite days of the week in descending order. He says that so far he's up to 0.
Then Kyrut revealed this secret business report. Everyone's busy locally, but where are the universal traders?
Political news flash and flashpoint. The mayor of one city refused to continue with the ceremonies as long as he knew there were still ants in his driveway.
And Kyrut said, if you think only as much as is necessary to live, you'll never realize the benefit of thinking more.
Then student advisor, Mr. Kyrut, offered his intellectual guidepost. If you're already on the bus before you ask how many bathrooms they have, you waited too long. Then, suddenly disguised as Professor Obvious, Kyrut added, the galaxy that produced the phrase, better safe than sorry, was, as I'm sure you must have guessed, already sorrier than hell when they said it.
And Kyrut said, and one young rebellious lad thought to himself, I cannot escape the system into which I was born, but I don't see how it can stop me from constructing another, even more complex, one within myself.
One man, in an attempt to bring some order into his otherwise mental operations, decided to classify all of his thoughts into categories: brilliant, promising, potentially useful, and real bow-wows. He says he's about ready to open a kennel.
And Kyrut said, those who live only one lifetime have only local views.
Then this from Kyrut. As he pondered certain of the anomalous expectations of his ordinary subjects, one king gazed out toward the harbor and thought, Why should I send out a physician on a ship I know is going to sink?
And our avocationally attuned avuncular old advisor Kyrute noted, although it goes under many different names and guises, everyone's favorite hobby is still problems.
Around 4:30, a new speaker appeared in City Park, took up the position, and told the crowd, "Words serve no function other than for the speaker to blind the listener." And they all shouted back, "Can you speak a little louder? We can't hear you."
And Kyrute remarked, while waiting for nothing in particular, this one chap turned and said that his latest endeavor was to try and teach his hormones to smile without groaning.
And Kyrute said, one rebel trooper began the enjoyable task of continually reminding himself, if you're not thinking more than is necessary to live, get by, and succeed in life, you're not thinking enough. On one kitty planet, they presently are wrapping the atomic bubblegum brand in a message that says, it's easy to be a revolutionist once you understand what it is. Of course, it's also just as easy not to be.
And Kyrute said, those who mentally accept local reality as the present final word, even those who say it must be dramatically changed as soon as possible, all of these minds are locked into a circular tango with a faceless and feckless partner. And a viewer who says he is anxious, excited, and intelligent wants to know, is there no way out? Why, certainly, sir. Certainly, Aola.
And Kyrute said, the prescription for being too simplistic is obvious. But if you're too simplistic, you never see it.
One old man's advice to his kid, as the kid began showing unmistakable signs of becoming unkid-like, anyone who asks you a question doesn't have your best interest at heart. 3 days later, the elder grabbed the boy by the veranda and gave it to him thusly. Anyone who asks you a question doesn't have your best interests at heart, unless it's you doing the asking. Then 10 hours after that, the old man slapped the lad silly and said, anyone who asks you a question doesn't have your best interests at heart, unless it's you doing the asking, but then, what are you doing talking to trash like that to begin
with? And Kyrute said, anything you remember, you helped cause.
And Kyrute said, those on buses wish they were on trains, and those on trains dream of being on planes, and those in planes look down on the buses and say, shoo, where's that terrible odor coming from? Backup note. If civilized men did not have a simply egregious memory, life would not be going so exceedingly well.
Each morn, as he would lean out the bathroom window to spit out his mouthwash, this one chap would follow up by shouting out as loudly as possible, I trust you'll be pleased to know that the word surrender is still not in my vocabulary of action.
The agent on the other end of the line said, "Yes, if the premiums are high enough, we'll insure anything." And the guy jiggled his phone, yelling ever louder and louder, "Hello, hello, is this really Life talking?"
And Kyrute observed, the revolutionist's mind treats even the best of collective knowledge as at least partially crippled, and rightfully and profitably so.
Then Kyrute the economist commented, "The interest rate on stupidity. You wouldn't believe."
One city told its young son, just remember, no matter how sincere you are, you're still not sincere.
And Dr. Kyrute noted, "If you see with but one eye, things seem confusing. But if you look with two, they become frightening and annoying." And a city entrepreneur, realizing the difficulty in directly affecting men's intellectual life, and operating on the principle that you do what might be possible, decided to offer a line of primary world prosthesis. He began with the introduction of gonad glasses. Now, as silly as this may at first sound, might I note for your personal consideration the fact that life still seems to graciously accept attempts by man to improve upon that which can't be.
And Judge K handed down this decision. A not guilty finding is significant from only one source.
And Kyrute told this story. After the young prince had undergone his required 20 years of intellectual instruction and secondary formation, the king told the royal court tutor to also go ahead and give him his necessary lessons regarding his primary world. The old wise one bowed to the directions, turned to the prince, and said, "Don't fuck up the machinery."
One guy says he's decided to have a direct and conciseness contest with life. Thus far, he's passed along no scores to us.
And Kyrute said, "When it seems important whether a bus is headed north or running south, yet also is of no significance when you're on it, you may rest assured that you're traveling with a local brain in mind." Once the journey was underway and the bus was a-bouncin' and the miles were a-clickin', to help comfort himself, one man said to his thinking, "Come lay your head on my pillow." To which his intelligence replied, "I am your pillow."
And a correspondent asks, is it helpful to dance with friends even if they're dense and local also? Would this be of any improvement? What a question. What a question-o.
And Kyrute, the secret gatekeeper of the secondary pasture, said, "If you get what you expected, you weren't really thinking."
For the free-form portion of their presentation, the duo skated out this icy message. Think big, think small, think a lot, or not at all. And 4 of the 5 judges officially stated that this was ridiculous, for which the contestants had no reply other than to later enter the 3-legged broad jump.
Standing clearly at the corner of 2 city streets, a chap this morning was addressing the passing traffic in these words: "All of the nuts, crackpots, and idiots of the world deserve a place to speak, and I am their forum."
And Kyrut said, "Another of those old subversively inclined old men told his equally possible kid, 'Kid, as you whiz along this trip, you shouldn't leave any evidence. But if you do, then eat it.'" Dietary supplement. One's seditious leftovers and garbage may be consumed with impunity. Where appropriate, substitute the word must for may.
And Kyrut said, "In the heart of their most vital days contributing to reality's overall well-being, life seems to want the average man to, for a while, feel secure, safe, and turgid."
As a surprise birthday gift to himself, a certain rebel realized, regarding his abstract inner activities, a continuing running monologue is a form of mental activity going nowhere.
And Kyrut said, "A one-lifetime view just will not do."
And Kyrut commented, "On one strange little planet, 'tis said that to make things additionally interesting, they changed the basic battle between good and evil to one of between good and extra good." Trust me, be extra thankful you don't live there. Or have to go there on business. Trust me on this one.
Then Kyrut served up this: the rebel painter's view of the various schools as applied to his areas of effort. Representational at the primary, expressionism otherwise.
The note, posted in the upper northwest area of the bulletin board, read, "A man with a ladder doesn't have to live in the basement, but if he does so choose, he'd get a discount in his rent." Note within a note for any freshmen or first-time users of the laundromat. Certain messages about the mind, directed to the mind, can give the old sot a particularly hard time. When in any doubt, fluff dry at low temperature.
Then Kyrut Dagama mapped out the following. It's damn near improbable for a real neural explorer to take a wrong turn.
Then, awaiting your other lab test results, the doctor made this observation. You have failed the exam if you say, "Yes, I see it," and still feel no better.
Then Kairut read us today's fairy tale. One day the king's intellectual advisor told His Majesty, "Why would a man truly on a trip tell you about it?" Yeah, he told him that. In his dreams.
And a viewer writes to tell us thusso. As regards one of your recent stories in which someone made the comment that there are no such things as inanimate objects that are real troopers, well, I'd like to add my toe jam's worth and say that there are no such things as dumb buses, only dumb bus drivers. Oh, he PS'd us here at the bottom of his letter. I trust you will immediately recognize the validity and value of my comment, and will read it on the air, and perhaps invite me over to your house for real good chat. Yours, etc.
And Kairut noted, giving no warning could be considered the secondary world's standard warning.
And Kairut noted, near one well-known city solar system was an abstract rebel camp which taught the younger recruits this along the way method. Think biologically and feel intellectually.
Another chap downtown, as a matter of fact, hanging about suspiciously close to that coffee shop where so many of the old soreheads congregate. Well, at any rate, this guy was telling his buddy there with him that he'd about decided that everyone is born with an inheritance of some nice undeveloped beachfront property, which they managed to eventually turn into a graveyard.
And Kairut noted, a man full of city convictions is always too simplistic.
And as they danced, partner Axel whispered to partner Wheel, "Never get locked into anything." And partner Wheel whispered back, "Even into certainty?" And Axel whispered his reply, "Are you deaf as well as smelly?"
In his attempt, as he phrased it, to realign some of his ligaments, one chap Sir?
To realign some of his ligaments.
In his attempt, as he phrased it, to realign some of his lineaments, one chap adopted the approach that you should tickle a man when he's down.
Then Kairut offered us this kind assurance. If you think you know what to do, but just can't seem to do it, don't worry, you don't really know what to do. And Kairut added, if this does actually make anyone feel better, please don't let me know about it.
And Kairut said, in rebel camp, which is a revolutionist's mind, of course, fresh, original thought never needs interpretation.
And from that dreaded alleyway comes another, yes, another message from the Whisper Man. If you don't understand the distinct corollary between words and numbers, then take one and move to the back of the sentence.
And Kairut said, more architectural curios regarding the vertical construction of common urban factories. A man with fun on his mind may have a gun in his pocket. Everyone in the city has a gun in their pocket.
One old city priest advised his young apprentice, "Put all the gel and conditioner you like on your hair, but keep the insides of your head as dry as possible."
And Kairut said, "Don't answer the dead."
And Kairut said, "As regards the specific figuring out of particular things, if you know how to be intellectually more specific, you can just forget about it."
Each morning, as they would pass in the hallway on the way to the bathroom, one old man would write to his kid and say, "If you're on an extended journey, stay there."
And Kairut commented, "A certain person who has been following these proceedings for a while went off out of his factory room one fine day, sat himself up under a fine oak tree, and pondered. If you can either act or think about acting, then can you either think or think about thinking?" He was appreciative that the story didn't entail a squirrel or some other small creature responding to his ponder.
And Kairut said, "While on an orbital cruise, one abstract rebel took a quick peer into himself and declared, 'I shall suppress only that which would suppress me.'"
Then Kairut handed out Monday's quiz for the Monday day. Question: other than my own brain chemistry, it's all irrelevant. Answer: what was the question?
And Kairut said, "From a useful intellectual level, it may be fairly noted that where life grows greatest seems to be most local turmoil. And a few with universal credentials smiled and sighed, praise be to reality, and thank you, upheaval."
Then Kairut noted, chronology revisited. Local thinking equals time.
And Kairut said, "On one world, they say that the origins of that insincere expression, 'Oh, isn't he cute?' was from the first time life looked into a mirror and saw man as its own first baby picture."
And Kairut said, "For the rebel merchant, profit is only possible if you leave your room."
Just before their non-existent mail call one morning, an old rebel sergeant told some young troopers, "Okay, heads up, listen up. If you ain't thinking, you ain't gonna think." A hand-written sign in the latrine reminded the recruits, merry-go-rounds were made to disassemble.
And Kairut said, "Those who say that man is too complex to ever be fully understood are correct. You see, right? All conclusions of fact are correct for the concluder.
In what he says is a personal attempt to put some contemporary concerns into a more direct and proper context, this one man now walks the city streets crying out in a loud, clear voice, "I am not an environmentalist. I am the environment." On selected Saturdays, he adds the line, "And so are you."
Then Kyrute offered even more optometric news. Everyone is born with local eyesight, which is why so many people need glasses.
Then Kyrute offered this travel memo. It is difficult to kill yourself by jumping from a bus. Not impossible, but difficult. Additional note. Leaping from the heights of one's own stupidity is hardly ever lethal.
Then Kyrute passed along a short item from the really weird book of weird tales. Once upon an etc., etc., on a faraway planet, the elders said that life had originally introduced the idea of a personal revolution just to keep certain creatures from having too much fun.
Then Kyrute gave out another of those non-existent, irrefutable, get away from me with that, rebels rules. Never confess twice. Hey, why the hell did you confess once to begin with?
And Kyrute said, "The beginnings of all interplanetary space travel is inner in you."
One of this morning's speakers in the park exhilarated the crowd. "I say, you can't let them get you down." And they shouted back, "Oh, yes, you can." And he cried out, "Who are you?" And they replied, "Everybody." And he said, "Oh, then I guess you're right."
Then Kyrute recounted another rule of the city mental road. No one can tell the truth the first time, and by the second try, they've forgotten how.
Then Kyrute noted, one old man's fresh suggestion to his kid: until you can keep your thinking simple, at least keep it non-complex. Instant is one example of why some kids love their old man.
And Kyrute said, "The duty of a real thinker is to make his thinking better."
And a viewer writes, although I agree with many of those other viewers you make up and read letters from, that most of what you say is incomprehensible, I must in all fairness now admit that after listening to you for some time, I do see that if life itself is not alive, then all that we might say or do would be the absolute height of foolish pretension. In a postscript, he invites me to try and refute his comment. He says he tried to do so himself and sprained his cortex in the process.
And Kyrut advised, "Don't let alligators in your room."
And Kyrut said, "Down in one village was a young, excitable boy who one Tuesday morning said to himself, 'All right, if I can't be king, I'll be a pest.' The lad knows best. Out in the electrochemical goo fields, it's difficult to round up a group of neurons for a specific purpose, since they're naturally found in groups to begin with. Mary and the lamb both asked me to suggest to you most strongly that it could be in your best interest to consider this idea further."
And Kyrut said, "It is vehicles with 3 wheels that roll through the human mind and leave no tracks."
And for any would-be abstract revolutionists in our audience, Kyrut offered this tip. You should know at least twice as much as is necessary for this lifetime.
And Kyrut said, "For any extraordinary personal use, the past is far too simple, which is another reason man has history, so that he can try and remember otherwise."
Growing up near certain rebel activities, one young lad began to think, "It's not so much a matter of what I do with my life as it is what I make of my intelligence."
And Kyrut said, "Real revolutionist thinking is always futuristic."
And Kyrut said, off on his own, one man figured that there must be some sort of progression, like going from being ordinary to being ordinary and unusually anxious, to being a would-be revolutionist, to being a revolutionist, and then just to being.
And Kyrut said, "Once the rebels' plane had reached the proper altitude, word was passed along. Abort the past."
I'll continue to look back and forth to the other camera now that one's not working. Go ahead. Pretending to, for a bit further, talk to some of you people watching this through the grand, glorious, post-death benefits of, who was it? Now I forgot who invented television. Oh. You people watching, who invented cable? Don't tell me Mr. Cable. For those of you who are interested enough to watch this on television and have been writing and wondering about what in the hell is it, even those of you who seem to like it and still not sure, and we were sort of talking for once to the general public. Well, one thing about this that begins to dovetail even with people who are attempting to in some way pursue it on a personal level, not just watch it, even while admitting in all sorts of directions that this kind of activity is certainly not unique with me, us, it is not singular to this time, and even though I've been calling it the revolution, and the people that putting the tapes together have been calling it still listed as new intelligence, right? Which is fine with me, but that's not the name of it. But then you can start playing especially in a cynical way, about, well, wait a minute, you're trying to engage in some sort of East Coast Zen update. And not really. It is that this thing has no name. But, and that's easy to say, and we'll just let it go at that. And those of you that still believe that you're locked in to a berth in your own harbor that is listed as 1960, those kind of peers. But it's not just a play with words to say it has no name. It is the ever-present, from a revolutionist view, whatever that is, danger of the way that energy works. That once you put a name on something, it's just the way things are. It is a temporary grounding of energy. Those of you that can consult with your own electricians in your own goo field, that is, the great enterprise, the business listed in the yellow pages under M in most places, that is Mary Ann the Lamb, she normally gets top billing, they'll tell you that once you come to a conclusion at the verbal level, at the secondary level, it has temporarily, which is all that counts at the primary level, has grounded out. The lightning has hit the ground. And so if you say, well, wait a minute, what is this? All right, I won't call it the revolution, let's call it this. Televised insanity. Then many people go, well, aha. And in a moment of passing lucidity, he admitted it. Well, that covered that. What does it cover? Back to, I was going to say, there's a certain point that is not just directed toward the random public that might see this, but to everybody. That I could have brought this into a non-televised aspect some night of this. And it goes like this, that just because you cannot find a name for something does not prove that it is a passive activity. And that is a continuing, what's the synonym for danger? Oh, danger of someone attempting to do this. And it's partly a danger that even these kind of televised proceedings, even me talking, even the Kairos being read, is that you can fall into, well, more and more I see that it has no basis in objective institutions, that it is not really just some sort of secret offshoot of religion, or it's not some new metaphysical something or other. That anything I can put a name on, it really squirms out of it. I begin to see that, yes. But even to get a glimpse of that, there is a kind of little area where you might pull in there at the great piers that say 1960, next to 1960, 1960, that you might pull in a small rowboat and think, well, wait a minute. I see that there's nowhere to park an absolute verbal identification of this thing. I cannot bring in a ship that says on its bow, the thing, the revolution, the quest, the mystical journey, riding with Bigfoot. I see that there is no great name to this. There is no specific name. And hey, I'm getting so good, I'm getting so hip that it doesn't bother me all that much. And so I can sort of go with the fact that, all right, I'm not sure what this is, and I no longer, all the time, am not concerned. But then there's another. What was that synonym you said for danger? Yeah, danger. There's still that continuing kind of danger that just because, even if you get to the point that you, we'll say momentarily, which might last off and on for a while, that you can think, well, all right, I can accept the fact this has no name. But there is danger. Those synonyms get me. That there is a danger that I was trying to point out, that just because something seems to have no name, even if you accept the fact, there's a danger in then assuming that it's a passive activity. That is, all right, this has no name, and therefore it's not active. Now, of course, you would have never analyzed it in that way, which doesn't matter, because the things that have no name are not subject to being routinely analyzed to begin with. So I'm doing it for you. Well, thank you. Hey, not to mention it. No, they didn't mention it. Call my agent. This is tied into something else that all of you are experiencing, whether you're out there on television or people who have actively tried to pursue it either now, or those of you that are 3,000 years old. Surely know what I'm talking about. And that is that if you listen to something that, even if you get up close to the point, that you kind of skate around the edges, like that Joe that was mentioned tonight, that I didn't know that so few of you had an interest in the ice skating aspects of Olympic mental games, but I admit after I heard it, it was pretty sketchy, but did you knew what they were doing? Even if you skate up to the edge, you get close to being able to accept the fact that there could be something quite real that there is no name for. And of course, skate a little bit further, that it might start reaching a corner of three-dimensional reality, or of any reality wherever you were, that in fact it might only be at another level, things only be real once they have no name. And not just the thing, it's not just, well, the thing is so glorious, don't fall into the trap because it's just a crude reflection that religions do, like, wait a minute, because this was an old one, even before you ever heard of the Baptist Church, that real religion, God, real God, had no name. And it coming up with names later such as, what is it? Yeah, God, that this was an afterthought, that the real gods have no name. It's only these cheap knockoffs that got names like God and Allah. And that's it's of no consequence out in the ordinary world, but that is some improvement over God. It's for those that had the belief that, wait a minute, anything you call God is not really God. It's it's God's brother-in-law or some kind of cheaper version. That was still a reflection of the fact that if there's anything I was suggesting to you that had extraordinary meaning, it could not have a name. But not for these kind of weird things like, well, I'm assuming that some of you followed that. It's a good thing assumptions don't really cost a man any money, isn't it? That if anything had any importance, it wouldn't have a name. It would have to be, but again, this gets back to the kind of fairly routine metaphysical beliefs that pop up in life that, well, the real great forces are the real God, not God of Christianity, not Allah of Islam, and not some cosmic force in Buddhism, not all that, but the real God, the real supreme reality would be nameless. It has a nice sound to it. Even ordinary people will kind of vibrate their little nervous system. They go, ooh, ooh, boy, that'd be, ooh. And they want to roll their eyes and think, ooh, I'm almost had a mystical experience. Of course, it could be just a chill in the air, but they go, ooh, ooh. It is, with no sarcasm, it is based on reality, is what I'm trying to suggest to you, that at any level, anywhere, and it got nothing to do with religion, got nothing to do with your race, nationality, your culture, where you grew up, if there is something that is more real than what seems to be real, the dream of, I wish I could figure out what's going on in life, then it cannot have an ordinary name. That's just a fact. It's not mystical, it's not spooky, and even though it sounds properly, I guess, to ordinary mind to be a non sequitur, it is not. Because if it's got a name, you already know what it is. And if you already know what it is, what the hell are you doing going, I want to go off on a mystical journey. I want to know the secret. Well, hell, you must know it. Yes, it's here somewhere, you got to start looking, for words, and, where do I have it? I know it somewhere. You either know it or you don't know it. Well, all right, that sounds fair enough. If I don't know it, what is it? Aha. Of course, then ordinary minds will go, aha, back to you. Tell me. I got a few extra bucks. I'll pay you. What is it? If you can say what it is, that's not what it is because you already knew that. So what it is you're searching for has got no name. It is the great mythical beast. It is the reality that truly has no name to you. Forget out there. Forget the institutions or some guy wrapped in a sheet or dressed up in a striped shirt and a little outfit and saying, yes, the great truth has no name. And you think, yeah, but you know what it is. All right. When's the punchline? All right, send me $10 and I'll tell you the name. It has no name. But don't look at the institution like there's some group or some guy somewhere hoarding the name, or that there's one guy that knows the name and you can't find it. The fact that it has no name is not an external manifestation. It's not that, all right, there's a name and it's out there and I don't know it. No. It's internal. That is, any name you know is not it. Because if it is, you already know it. So it doesn't matter that the name is an objective, specified entity. It's something you don't know. It is the further completion of your own nervous system at this end. That's what you don't know. That's what the unspoken name is. That's what this kind of stuff represents. rightly or wrongly. That's what it is representing. That's the attraction to people. That and they keep wanting to go like, well, maybe next time he'll spill the beans, or maybe it'll just finally come out. I don't come out of where. But back to what I wanted you to consider, though, and people here, not just out in TV land. It's not even psychological, but it'll make sense psychologically if it makes sense at all in the beginning. Is just because you can't put a name on something, even if it seems that you still are interested in it, like many people that watch this, the way they react to it, that, all right, I'm not sure what it is. You even deny that the new intelligence or the revolution is meaningful at all. All right, I accept that. You say it's not. Okay. So even though it doesn't have a name, I'll go along for a while. But it is part of the flow of energy, the way that life works. If something does not have a name and you still have some attraction to it, what was that synonym? Danger. The great danger is you take it as being a passive activity. That is, well, I'm not sure what it is, so you want to lay back, look like Jabba the Hutt or somebody. Pavarotti before the diet. And you say, all right, feed me. I like the sound of this. And so, especially on TV or people watching out there, it'd be one way to do it. Would seem to be easier since you're one step removed, but you can do it here in person. It's like, read me more Kairouts. No, I'll take a nap, or talk to me some nights it sounds interesting and some it doesn't, and it's not passive. People can be entertained on the basis of it being passive, which is the quote danger, especially out there, as people think, well, it's some kind of show, or it's a comedy show, or it's some kind of secret, or there's a punchline coming. And you just take it as being a passive activity. If you're actually interested in it, it is not a passive activity. From a revolutionist view, even from a more complex, ordinary intellectual view, you'd have to strain yourself. You'd have to refine, or at least refry, for those of you of a Latin persuasion, the whole definition of the word oxymoron to say a passive activity. Hand in hand with that is if you just listen, even to what I just described, of taking something, even if you feel like, well, I still have an interest in it, and I'll accept the fact that it has no specific name, or it's not really definable, or at least nobody will define it right now, and yet I'm still interested. It's also then, it seems like it's right past that, the danger to a would-be rebel, is that then, the more you hear about it, it's almost the less you seem inclined to do. It's like, just stuff me, Mama. All right, shovel it in. I'll take all I can. I'll take a nap. I'll take a few days off. Take some time off. What a curious concept. Yes, but sometimes I need a day off. Sometimes I just have to. I can't watch the show 2 weeks in a row. Worse than that is people that's been involved and thought they were on an active basis. And sometimes, I started to say no offense to you, but you can take offense if you'd like to. But don't take it at me, you should take it at yourself. Spit out the window and holler like the man did. You people will be glad to know, he shouted after the mouthwash, that the word surrender remains absent from my vocabulary of action. Not his vocabulary, if you weren't listening, from his vocabulary of action. And then the question might be, who was the man hollering to out the window? And by now you should know that Kairoute is inclined to be tricky if you listen sometimes, because nobody asked me. Sorry, but I personally doubt whether some guy is actually sticking his head out of a window and hollering at other people. Now, I don't know. I could be wrong. Not likely, but I said that on the basis that I helped Kairoute write that one. So the danger is that if you do even accept this has no name, and you do fall into, you've never analyzed it verbally, into taking it as being, all right, a passive activity, that I in some way am just about going to soak up. I have to take time off sometimes. I get overloaded. I get waterlogged. But it's almost as though I'm going to soak this up. The great process of not Otis Redding, osmosis. Through the great process of osmosis, I will in some way absorb this. I will, almost by being able to lay there and do a fairly good imitation of Raymond Burr, where he's still alive. He is. And I'll just kind of soak it up. It gets to be a kind of danger that you feel like, well, again, without analyzing it, but I'm putting words on it for you, is like, the more you hear, if you listen in a certain way, and it's not a very profitable way, it may be the best that you've done up until now, or you may be falling into it, it's almost as though the more you listen, the less you seem inclined to try and do about it. And yet there's a kind of balance. It's like life. This is not actually it, but there is no actually it in a three-dimensional verbal description. But it's almost as though life says, well, I'm being very symbolic in this description, but it's like, let's take you personally, whoever you are, and it's like life says, well, this person's getting a little out of hand. They're having a little bit too much fun. They're almost getting to be an active revolutionist. And so it's almost as though it kind of catches up with what you're trying to do to where you feel like, well, by God, I understand so much now. I think I'll pursue that curious concept of a little time off. Except you don't look at it that way. You look at it, well, I'm still listening. I'm still tuning in the show, or I'm still coming to these tapings. And yet it becomes a kind of passive activity. And it seems like that the more you listen, and you think, well, I'm getting better. I'm so used to the jargon now. Boy, I pity those people turning on TV and watching this, but I've been hearing them use secondary and primary and all these terms. I understand what it means now. Of course, I admit all these terms are getting a bit hairy themselves. They're about ready to be jettisoned. They passed the word when the plane reached the right altitude. Abort the past. Under the right circumstances, that is a frightening word to be passed throughout the vehicle. And for those of you that would like to be good, forget about an airplane, of course. Consider a Rebel's aircraft as being something above the assembly line level. Once it reaches a certain proper altitude, the word gets passed along. From the pilot to the people in the back, give me a break. The word gets passed along amongst the crew of your neural ship. It says, abort the past. And ordinary generations go, Jesus, where would I go? What would I do? And on that cliffhanging note, I can only say, tune in again next time and perhaps receive a word of salvation. A word to inspire those of you frightened that my plane is now out of control. Now that I tried to abort the past, I have no rudder. There is no vertical stabilizer. Tell me something new.